Welcome, Fred McNeil, Project Director at Orwell Construction, specializing in high quality projects, and a longtime friend, and my very, very first client at Sheer Negotiations in 2015, back when Fred was working at Ganellen in Sydney. So, Fred, like I said before, it's such a pleasure to have you just to meet you every once in a while because it's nice to see how the material that I taught in 2015 you've adopted it and you've made it your own. And it's nice to hear how it's impacting your work. And that's what I want to talk to you about today.
All good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, my very first question is, how do you build trust with the clients, the subcontractors, the consultants, whether like architects, engineers, etc.? Because you're constantly working with all of these people and you need everyone to align. You need things approved quickly. You need buy-in. You need to sell. How do you do that?
Couple of ways, I guess, that go about it. Number one is obviously always to have integrity, and so that they know that they can trust you. If you say you're going to do something, that you follow through and you do that. And after a few interactions with the same person, where they see that you genuinely do what you say you're going to do, I think that's probably the foundation of it. But to break probably another way though to break down it become more being more than just a work relationship going to and fro. You need to kind of tap into that personal side of things. So to build that trust, I try every time I have a conversation with someone, if it is for the purpose of work related, pick up the phone or go and meet them. Always have that kind of pre couple of minutes before you actually dive into what you're actually wanting to talk about to just catch up with them. And it can seem laborious, it can seem awkward, it can seem fake at times, but after the first two or three times, you get a little snippet out of every conversation that you have with them. And it's about probably actively listening to that, not just rocking up and saying, "Oh, what'd you get up to on the weekend? How you going? Oh, terrible weather." It's actually, in each interaction, maybe asking one or two questions and actually actively listening to the answer. I gave the example to you just before. I was speaking to an architect the other day. I met him for the first time. Saw he had a tan. I was like, "Oh, you just come back from holiday?" And he's like, "I've just come back from Mexico." And from that, I'd been to Mexico a couple of years ago, and it just triggered a little bit of a back and forth. And then, the next time I met him, I called him up and I was like, "Mate, you never guess. I went to a brilliant Mexican restaurant in Coogee last week. You've got to go." And and then that dived into another conversation. And over several conversations, or, weeks, days, months, or whatever, you build this back and forth rapport. You learn a little snippet about them. You find out, they've got a daughter the same age as my daughter. And the next time you find out that, he's a nippers coach down at his beach where he lives, and I'm a nippers coach down at the beach that I were. And through doing that, you build a genuine relationship. But like I say, when I first started doing this, it's hard because you sit in there and it feels awkward. Seeing someone that you've never met before, where you're literally calling them up and saying, "Hey, please update a drawing for me." But to then start off a conversation and just talk and try and extract any little nippet that you can kind of relate to. But it becomes easier. But I think the most important thing is to actively listen to the responses and remember them. So I always kind of straight away after I've had a phone call with meeting someone new, I'll open up my notes on my phone and I'll make a little note to try and remember it. So that the next time we do interact, I've got that kind of in my tool belt to spark off the conversation again. It's always easy to get someone out of someone if they've got a smile on their face. So if you make them feel good, it's a good way to kick things off.
And we always think we'll remember this stuff, but we never do. I never do. I barely remember names. Like
Yeah, same.
if I don't write things down, I mean, you and I have been in contact for 10 years, but if I meet someone for, I don't know, a 1 hour conversation and then come back to them a month later, I'm not going to remember everything that they said.
Yeah. I'm weird like that. Like I'm terrible with names, so I'm the worst person that will always be like, "Hey buddy, hey mate." But I don't know, I just remember details. I'm kind of
Okay,
that guy. I
that's
can
good.
still remember, like, my textbooks at school. I'm not going to say photographic memory, but I can still remember the layout of pages. I can still So when I've had that interaction, the Mexico conversation, I'll never forget that. And when I just see that person's face, I'll associate it with that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it; it's hard for some people, and there's people who have different tricks how to do it. But if you can break down, it becomes more than just a work transaction, and there's a bit of, if they see your name on the phone come up and they're actually happy to answer it, that's a great start to any negotiation or transaction.
That's a really great general tip, but I want to ask you specifically about the construction industry because taking that tip and applying it in construction is not as easy as it seems. It sounded to me when I met you in 2015 that the construction industry is really harsh in its negotiations. The culture is very competitive, very transactional, very like testosterone. You know, you said that you had a
Mm.
go-to tip where you throw pages in someone's face. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
that it was about intimidation. One of the tactics that your CEO used was to throw out a number and then sit back and like do something on his phone, like the silence tactic. It
Mm.
seemed to me like the sort of culture where you've got to be very aggressive or else you're not going to get the results that you want. So when you talk about
Yeah.
tactics like remembering people's the details about their children or trying to build rapport with them, how do you apply that in this culture? And what do you think is important to know about construction negotiations?
So I think with construction negotiations, there is a difference between us negotiating with a client, um, to us negotiating with a consultant, to then us negotiating with a subcontractor. They're three very different negotiations and three very different tactics. Um, a client negotiation always just boils down to very kind of a rights based approach. It's very legal, it's very technical, and that's because we're signing you know multi-million-dollar contracts with a client, and it's really a lawyer talking to a lawyer, and this is a number, these are the rules of the game, and it really doesn't get personal when the type of negotiations we're doing with clients on a client side. Yes, you can do bartering mixes and things like that to get the end result, but there's no emotional connection there. It's because you're talking such large quantities of money. I don't feel we get into the do you trust me, do I trust you. I mean, you can impress them and show them what you're doing. You can put your best foot forward and make them want to use you, but the actual negotiation, the nitty gritty of what's in, what's out, what's the final price, what's the deadline, it's a very cold negotiation in that respect. With consultants, when I'm negotiating with an architect or a BCA consultant or the like, that I find consultants are softer than tradies. So I can do exactly what I said to you. I can remember them and talk to them and build up that friendship, and then be like, oh, go on, mate, go on, just can you do that for me? Can you throw it in? Can you do that? The negotiation I think you're talking about is, though, with our subbies. Yes, it can be very, very hard. It can be cutthroat. But since we've met, the industry's gone through waves. We hit COVID. COVID changed everything up on its head. A lot of negotiations and became over Skype and Zoom and Teams meetings. That changed things. We lost a huge amount of the workforce, so prices just absolutely skyrocketed. So all the power was with the subcontractor. I just couldn't get trades to site. You couldn't pay them enough. You couldn't give them enough. You couldn't offer them enough to get them to your job. So you had to develop that soft side where they wanted to work with you. You had to be genuine. There was no just throw a number out there. If you don't want it, no worries, mate. I've got a line of people coming up. We didn't have that. There was no BATNA. There was no BATNA to anyone. It was, please come and work for us. But then again, it's starting to change now. There's a lot more work out there in the market, so the power's kind of shifting back to the builder less than the subcontractor. So, and probably alongside that, I genuinely believe the industry is starting to change as well. Think of the 1970s where you just had site managers that would just bash people, working every hour. A lot of companies are only doing 5-day work weeks now. Like it is becoming, the industry is changing. So that bash approach, I don't feel it is as prevalent anymore. It's definitely changed in the 10 years. Maybe that's just because we personally are implementing different ways of negotiating. It's a lot easier to have your core group of subcontractors that you like to use time and time again and get and build that relationship where you can have open and honest conversations when you're negotiating. You get to that dream state where you're mining to find the best win-win deal rather than a win for me, lose for you, or just a single transaction. So yeah, it is changing. There's times when you do just have to, when a subby's not performing well, maybe once the initial deal's been done and a subby's not performing well, and there is a big argument to be had. Sometimes you do just have to take that, sit back. You owe me rights-based approach. There's a contract, you signed it, you're in it, get it done, or I'm going to take it further. But no, I don't think I think it has changed, and I think it's more important than ever with subcontractors to develop those other key skills in negotiation to get where you want. It's not just a bully tactic anymore.
Mm-hmm. So what are your best tips
For negotiating with subcontractors?
Let's take subcontractors first. Yeah. What are your
Okay.
best nuggets of wisdom?
Well, you got to prepare before any meeting. Obviously, that's the key thing. If you're walking in blind, there's it's never going to go anywhere. You're never going to do a deal in the room. You're never going to be prepared. So, and it's going to sound so cliche because I'm going to throw words out there that you taught me 10 years ago, and I don't mean it in a cliche way, because we use it in our business every single day. When we're going into a pre-meet, we have a pre-meet in our team, so our contract administrators will come to us. They'll have a spreadsheet all laid out, and the first thing is you've got to have other options, right? You've got to have coverage from other subcontractors. You've got to have your best alternative offer. So that if we're walking into this room, that my walk away point, if I can't get this number, I've got a better offer. It's okay, no worries, see you on the next one. So that's definitely number one. You've got to have a BATNA. Other tips: go in there and have lists of questions. Have gone through that quote, go through your scope. Make sure you've got a list of questions that you can be asking them. Or I like to use them more as statements, like, "Oh, you've included this, haven't you? You didn't mention it on your quote, but you've included this, haven't you? Traffic control. You digging up the street. You've allowed to do the permits of traffic control, haven't you?" So that you make sure that you've got everything there in, use your words, your bartering mix. So I still do it. I got the kind of, you create different offers where you say, okay, you don't want to do the traffic control, well then you are doing the permits. Or in this offer, you don't want to do the traffic, oh well, then the price obviously has to come down because I'm going to pay for that traffic control for you. So have those different options and know the value. Don't just say the job's worth this. Try and understand the breakdown of all those items that fall, because it's never just one item. Like in construction, you're not just purchasing a car. It's not just a one-off singular thing of value. There's multiple parts to it. Something that I always do that came from you is I always offer someone, if I can offer you a parking spot on site, will that change your price? Does that change how things work for you? Like, I've got limited spots, but I can reserve one for you if that makes your option cheaper. I understand it costs $30 to park in the city and you're going to be here for a week. I can guarantee you a parking spot, So being prepared, understanding what's valuable to me and try and predict what's valuable to them, so that when you're at the table, you can have that kind of back and forth of, well, this is in, this is out, this is in, this is out. We always throw an anchor out very, very early in a conversation. It's easy on, the easiest way for me to do it is just a meter squared rate, or you're building 20 apartments, the electricians come in, you're like, well, you can't be, couldn't possibly more than 20 grand an apartment. So, we're only talking this for X value for the contract maximum, surely. You just make a kind of a subtle anchor like that, and that, you'll never steer too far away from that number, or you'll know very early if we're not going to reach an agreement on that. So yeah, those type of tricks that I say tricks. You never like to think that you're manipulating someone, but I think once you've got your subcontractor base that you're using over and over again, um, you can do all that prep. But then when you're both, you're not sitting across the table from each other. There's some subbies that I'll bring in, and I'm like, no, come sit around here, come and look at my screen. And we're actually actively going there. I'm like, but I've thought about this. Is there anything else? Can you see anything on the drawing? What if we were to change this? And you're working
Mhm.
together because you just open and you say, I've got this budget. Um, I appreciate it. I don't want you to lose money. I mean, that's a key statement for us as well. We always say there's no way I'm asking you to lose money on the job. We've got to find a way together to get to a point that works for me, that works for you, and so you kind of do that mining tactic to get a win-win out of it.
Yeah. I mean, they do sound like tricks, but they're not tricks because you're not, it is very ethical from what I'm hearing. It's not that
Mm,
you're manipulating someone into the outcome that you want alone. It's that you're breaking down it was actually bargaining mix, not
that's it. Yeah.
bartering mix, but it really doesn't matter. That list of all of the items in the agreement or in the contract. And once you break that all down, it's creating an allowance for creativity. So when you
Mm,
say, well, if you take out the traffic control, then I'll do this, or if I'm going to add parking, you're creating you're creating space for creativity so that you can come up with the deal that's going to benefit both sides the most. And if they're not happy
mm,
to do whatever it is that you want them to do, that's fine because you can be flexible on something else and you can bring down or up the price depending on what they agree to. So I don't think it's manipulative at all. In fact, I think it's exactly how I teach and what I taught in 2015, and I'm so happy to hear it in practice. Um, yeah, that's beautiful. So, what changed for you back when we did the training the first time? I mean, did you negotiate a different way before then? I know there
I
are
think.
many ways to negotiate, and did you have a very different style, or do you think you did the same things but with less frameworks?
Oh no, I definitely had a different style. Kind of being um, more engineery than money side of things at that point in time in my career. Everything for me, I just default to facts. I would go into a contract. I would go in. I wouldn't know the person. I was fresh to Australia. I'd only moved here in 2012, so I didn't know any of the people. I had no history with anybody. I was still quite young, and the only way I knew to do it was to just be very factual. I was meeting with a bricklayer. I would prepare for the meeting by highlighting every bit of brick on the job and saying, "This is the scope. um, what is your price?" Almost like that. And just going through then when it would become to variations, trying to negotiate if a contract were done, I would default to the contract. But the contract says this, there is no wiggle room. Contract's the Bible, I'm sorry, there's no wiggle room. You're
Yes,
not
it's
entitled to this or you are entitled to this.
the
And
opposite
whether I
of
lost or
flexibility.
whether the opposite, because that was the only way I knew. I didn't know that there was another way of doing it. I mean, um, I also was a firm believer that in like a one-off transaction, when you buy a car, the only way to be is completely aggressive, and it's just the only thing that's important is I've got to get the price down. I've got to get the price down. I've got to get the
Mhm.
price down. But I think learning that I truly believe there's never such a thing. And I remember sitting in your class and you were like, even when you buy a car, you can use this. So I'm like, no, that's a one-off transaction. I'm never going to go to this dealership again. I'm never going to speak to this individual again. There's no way that I'm going to build this relationship with him where he wants to help me in this thing. He's just after his commission. I'm just after buying a car. But 2 years after a course, I went in and what I realized, what's value for me. Okay, maybe he's not going to be flexible on the price, but I go in there. I purposely went in at the end of financial year because I knew he'd probably want to hit a quota. I kind of started the conversation joking, saying, God, how many cars do you need to get sold to get your bonus before this? Like just laughing, joking, that sort of thing. I go in there and I understood that his price wasn't flexible, but there were other things that weren't valuable to him that he could easily throw in. I got him to put a full tank of fuel in there. I got him to give me some extra mats. I got him to throw in some roof racks that he had lying in the side of the garage. There is no such thing as a one-off transaction. You can always implement the technique into anything. Um, you know, Another example. I remember the week the 2 days after I left your course, you told me, call up a restaurant and try and ask for a 10% discount on the total bill. I was like, how can you possibly do that? You call up and Tuesday night, mate, do you not want to look good to your manager? Like, you've got an empty restaurant. I'm happy to bring 8 people in tonight. We're going to do 8 people, but you can knock 10% off the bill, can't you? And the guy at the other end of the phone had never heard, he laughed, he'd never heard it. And then sure enough, he came up on the phone, yeah, no worries. We'd love to see you tonight at party of 8, and it's just anything can be negotiated if you just, it's not just, I'm not just trading one good for one good. It's not just give me that for this. There's always something left on the table. There's always other value that could be taken out of it that I just never realized. We played the little game. I remember we played the little game in the core where it's like, I wanted to buy some oranges, but I didn't realize that the person selling me actually wanted the orange peel back or something like that. And so there was a deal that there's always more value to be had in any negotiation, and it's about extracting that value. It's not just, before I just thought it was, I want A for this price. But it's not. There's so much more things that have inherent value that should be taken into consideration. I think that's my biggest takeaway from the course.
Yeah, and when you say mining, you're now exploring, digging for more information so that you can extract more value for both sides from a renegotiation.
Yeah,
And that sounds like your current approach as opposed to what you just described.
definitely. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. I'm beaming with pride and I'm so, so, so happy that that's brought you value over the years.
No,
Um,
definitely, and it's something that we're passing on. In the business now, we teach these kind of same techniques to the younger guys. Um, we actively encourage them to do it in the meeting while we sit back and just kind of observe. And yeah, it is good to see, and it works. The truth is, it works. And it's not just beneficial for us; it's beneficial for the other side as well. Um, and yeah, it just makes things easier. You don't have to have those horrible arguments.
yeah, look, when I met you, I saw that you were very, very friendly, like you're a very good guy, and when you demonstrated how you like to negotiate, which was your previous approach, right? It seemed to me like that would take its toll on someone negotiating every day. Because if you're
Mm,
trying to be aggressive every day, that can get quite tiring. You're always in a state of, you know,
yeah,
clashing with
bit
someone
angst.
else.
Yeah.
And so there's not a wrong and a right way to negotiate. And I don't think that your previous approach is necessarily wrong, but there is a time and a place for each. And if you are negotiating every day, you want to choose an approach that you're comfortable with, that you enjoy, and that brings you the most value. So when people say the collaborative approach is a little bit naive or it's all airy-fairy, it's about building relationships, I don't think that at all. I think that
Mm,
you are a great case for how it works and how it matches your personality as well. And obviously
no,
it brings you
definitely.
value. So, Fred, thank you so much. This has been really a great conversation for me because I'm just, like I said, beaming with pride and happy to hear the teachings, said back to me and how you're actually implementing all of this. It's fantastic, and I really do see you as an amazing negotiator and a really great person, and we will be
Thank
in touch
you.
for years to come. So, thank you so much,
Definitely.
Fred.
Definitely. Thanks very much.